To build a strong future, you've got to learn from the past. History is absolutely dripping with amazing lessons and amazing people who have much to teach us. One of the most impressive individuals, of course, was Alexander the Great, king of Macedon, amazing commander, someone who pretty much took over the world and was undefeated. Yes, Alexander the Great was a military commander and a leader of men and lived a very different life from our own, but it's amazing how many of his tactics are transferable to the modern world. I've collected my favorites and shall share them with you so that we can all learn from his amazing practices. So what's the first lesson we can learn from Alexander the Great? Move fast. Alexander the Great's army could cover 25 miles in one day. One of his main opponents, King Darius III, could only cover 8 miles in one day. This gave Alexander the Great a huge advantage. The obvious lesson here is that it pays to move quickly. Another lesson from Alexander the Great: make it seem like you have more to work with than you actually do. At the Sogdian Rock, a fortress north of Bactria in Sogdiana, Alexander the Great had 300 of his men scale a sheer cliff using camping supplies to make it seem like he had outnumbered the people defending this fortress, which they thought was impenetrable. Even though Alexander the Great's men were outnumbered by 100 to 1, the people defending the fortress still surrendered because they were so surprised to see these men outside the walls. So even if you feel like you are at a severe disadvantage, if you puff yourself up a little, well, sometimes you can still win. Another lesson: draw your opponent with bait, then take advantage of the weak points that open up. On several occasions, Alexander the Great led his forces into feints that put his enemy into a weakened position. In some cases, these feints came in the form of surges of troops that would then encourage the enemy to attack, which would in turn open up some weak points that Alexander the Great would then take advantage of. In other cases, these feints came in the form of night exercises that made the enemy think that he was about to attack, whereas really he was just wearing them down and keeping them on their toes. So if you want to weaken an opponent, you can always draw them into a compromising position with some tantalizing bait or deceptive action. Yet another lesson from Alexander the Great: take advantage of others' rigid plans. Even though Alexander the Great sometimes found himself working with other people's terms, he still managed to beat them by noticing what they had planned on doing to win, and then basically depriving them of that ability. For example, at one battle, King Darius III had set out this huge tract of land for his cavalry, and Alexander the Great pretty much prevented him from being able to use it to his advantage. So you may feel like if you're entering into, say, a new social set or a new environment on which other people are playing on their own terms, that you are at a disadvantage. That may not be the case. You could use their rigidity against them. Crafty! Now, one lesson from Alexander the Great I feel is still totally applied in modern times, and that is to make your enemy wait. At one battle, he made it seem like he was about to attack the enemy forces, which kept them up all night, whereas he had his army sleep, and he himself slept in the next morning, so all of the Greek and Macedonian troops were well rested, whereas Persian troops were irritable and tired and not really ready to fight. Honestly, making your opponent tired, worn out, or frustrated can make a big difference. Of course, Alexander the Great didn't just think up amazing military maneuvers. He was an inspiring leader of men as well. And one of the things that made him so was his respect of his troops. He fought alongside them. He would walk amongst them after a battle and ask them how they all got their injuries, and I mean, that shows that he cared, and that would make me want to fight for someone. I'm sure it would make you want to fight for someone. So the lesson here is, if you want people to support you, you have to show that you care about them, and you have to respect them. Speaking of support, Alexander the Great was amazing at delegating, which is an essential task if you really want to achieve something significant. What's more, Alexander the Great ruled by example, not command. He fought in his battles, and he had the battle scars to prove it. Along those lines, Alexander the Great also made a really big point of maintaining a direct line of command in important battles. If you want something to make it, you gotta drive it. Finally, and I think this is a super important lesson, and one that distinguishes good leaders from truly transformative ones, is you have to have a clear, unifying vision. Alexander the Great definitely had this, and I think it's what separated him from the men who supported him, who were also very brilliant. But they didn't have this same charisma and vision and mission in life that was sufficient to unite thousands of people under one man. So this final lesson is, if you really, really want to achieve amazing success in life, You have to have more than just a desire to succeed. You have to have an overarching plan, an overarching mission, and something that people can rally around. Isn't that cool? I mean, Alexander the Great, he was amazing. I hope you enjoyed my collection of lessons from his life, and here's hoping that we can be maybe 2% as successful as he was. Yeah, that's probably asking too much.